Alright, today we're going to be installing the Gravely Ariens OEM Mulch Kit on this Gravely Compact Pro 34. As you can see, I've already got it up on a jack. Use a 2x4 across the front end and a regular 2-ton floor jack, and also make sure to use a jack stand. Lower the actual lawnmower onto the jack stand and then pump it up 1 or 2 more times so you got support from both the jack and the jack stand. That way it doesn't fall on you when you're working on it. And add 1 more jack stand on this side. And now we've got plenty of access underneath to get to the bed, the deck, so that we can install our mulch kit. Let's go see what's included in the mulch kit. So in our mulch kit that just came in yesterday, we've got the 2 guards here that help isolate the blades in each of their chambers on the deck. We've got the 2 OEM mulching blades. You can tell because they have the standard lift edge that you normally would, but they also have another raised edge here, creating that turbulent motion under the deck that allows it to mulch really well. We've got the guard that goes on the outlet where the discharge would normally be for the grass clippings. We've got the hardware, which is nice that it came with, and then the instructions to get it put on. So let's go see how all this comes together. So the instructions are pretty universal for their different size decks, from the 44, 40, and 52 inch decks to the compact decks, the 32, 34, and 36. And we're going to take a look at this diagram, and you can tell the 2 isolator guards. There's one that's smooth, and then there's one that has the tabs on either end. And if we compare that to what we've got here in the kit, you can see the same thing. We've got the one that's smooth and doesn't have any tabs on the ends, and then we've got the one that has the angled tabs on the 2 ends where it mounts, and then also they've got the tabs where they mount to the top portion of the deck. And if we look at the instructions, you can tell here on the deck, you've got the outlet of the deck on this side, and the guard that has the isolator guard that has the 2 tabs on it goes towards the discharge port, and the one that has the ends that don't have tabs goes on the portion of the deck that is furthest away from the discharge. So I'm going to go ahead and start on this one that's furthest away, and then we'll go step by step there. I'm going to lift this guy up, get it out of the way, give us some more clearance to look at everything. First thing we need to do is remove the blades, the existing blades. And you can tell these are high lift blades that are on here based on the extreme angle of the lifting edge. That's to get you to be able to discharge pretty efficiently, shoots the grass pretty far out. We don't need those on our particular lot where our house is here. We're only on a ½ acre. Main reason for the 0-turn motor is because we have a lot of trees, and it makes it a lot easier to mow, being able to get around the trees a lot more simply. So in order to remove the blades, we want to remove that nut there. And once you do, save the hardware, washers and things that come out. And we want to put the hardware along with the blades away, because we'll need the hardware to reinstall the new blades. And then the second blade there as well, we want to go ahead and remove that, and then we'll move on to the next step. So you can tell the blade spins, right? And what we want to do is lodge it in place. What I'm going to do is put this little cut of a tree trunk right here, and that way the blade lodges up against it, and I can put some torque on that bolt and get it off. Okay, so now we want to take the hardware off that holds. So this is the front of the mower, this is the back. You've got your semicircular guards right there towards the back of the deck. On the front of the deck, you've got this section here. So we want to take these off. They're not welded on, they're bolted on. There are bolts, if you can see there, along the front edge of the deck, and the hardware is here, and you can see some of the other screws, or the bolts and nuts there towards the front. So we want to remove the nuts and bolts that hold this front guard on, and get those off, and that's where our new Isolator Guards are going to fit. This is the old Isolator Guard that came out. The discharge is that direction. This is the end of the deck that's closed off on the left side of the driver. So I've got it laying out exactly like it goes. This is the top, that's the bottom. And these are the two isolator plates that we need to put on, and lining everything up to make sure they fit correctly. These two holes are going to go where the two old mounting tabs were. And then there's also a side bolt that goes through here, lag bolt with the square fitting on this side, and then a nut on the outside. So we're going to go ahead and put this one on, and then we'll come back and take a look at the other one. I'm using the new hardware that came with it. We've got 2 normal bolts, 1 lag bolt, and 3 of the locking nuts. And on the deck, we've got 1 mounting hole here for the lag bolt, and then 1 here, and 1 in the middle there for the other 2 bolts. So we're going to put this on, and then we'll move on to the next piece. Okay, we've got this isolator guard on. We've got the bolts that were used in the same spots for the factory guard, right there, and then right here through the side. If you notice, I haven't tightened them yet. And then there's another lag bolt that goes here that was not on the factory guard. That makes it a full circle so that it completely isolates that blade to that area. And this one is a lag bolt as well. I had to loosen these other 3 to be able to force this one in, just to get it in, and then hand tightened the nut on there. And I'm going to go ahead and leave these loose because there are 2 other mounting holes here. I think they go to the other guard, so we'll find that out in a minute. And once we get everything to where we were able to start the nuts and get some threads on there, that it's all in place, then we'll go back and tighten everything. So let's go ahead and get started on the other side. Now on this isolator guard, this is the one that goes towards the discharge, which would be normally the discharge. You can tell there's a mounting tab here and here for the old one. This one only has 1, and then the ends, there's some holes for some lag bolts here, and also a slotted hole on this side. Okay, now I see where it goes. So this is the new guard, and if you see there, that's the 2 holes on the other guard on the other side, and that's the 2 holes there on that tab. Those 2 go there. They'll fit up right against that. And then this mounting tab here goes in this bolt hole, which is right next to the discharge. And then that hole there will go here. We need to remove this piece too, which looks like it has 1 lag bolt here, and it's hard to see from under here, but there's another bolt right there with a nut on the other end. So we'll go ahead and remove that. Again, that's this piece here on the discharge. We'll go ahead and remove this guy, and then we'll be able to bolt the new one on. We've got all the threads started here, and the 2 that go between these 2 isolator guards. Now, this one was not reaching. I used the longer lag bolts that they included in the kit. Still couldn't get it far enough in to get the threads started. I was racking my brain trying to figure out how to get this thick piece of sheet metal stretched enough to line up with the bolt holes, and vice grips did the trick. So I lined them up best as I could, and got the vice grips on there. I don't want them touching all the way. I want the threads to pull those 2 pieces together, but I went ahead and did that and slipped the lag bolts through, got the nuts started, and that'll be enough to get this firmly in place, and I'll use the nuts and the bolts to cinch it down together. Now, one thing I'm worried about is if it's going to bend this in a way where it comes into contact with the blade, but we'll get the blade on, we'll spin it full 360, make sure that doesn't happen. If it does, we're gonna make some adjustments. So I'm gonna take the vice grips off after I get a couple more threads on these nuts, get those guys tight, get this one here, tight. Tighten down the guards on the other side, and then we'll get the new blades on. And then finally, we'll get the guard on that goes here to block off the discharge chute. Now these are completely installed. All the hardware is tight. Make sure to check all your nuts and bolts so that they're all tightened up. And next thing we're going to do is install our new mulching blades. And in order to install those, they don't come with new hardware. You're going to use the 2 bolts that you previously took off of the old blades. Get them started, and then once they're hand tight, use your ratchet. And then finally, if you have a torque wrench, you want to torque them down to about 125 foot-pounds. Typical car lug nuts are somewhere between 80 to 95 foot-pounds, so it's tighter than that if you have to do it by feel. 125 foot-pounds. And then as far as the blade orientation goes, you have the cutting portion, and then you should have the rising edge here on the outside, and then another rising edge on the inside. So this is the wrong way. This is the right way. This is going to be up. This leading edge is going to be pointing upwards. And we'll go ahead and get those installed. As you notice, both blades are the same. There's no difference between the right and the left. So let's go ahead and get those on, and then we'll check for clearance against the new Isolator Guards. Okay, the blades are on and torqued down. And we'll go ahead and give them a spin here. They don't come into contact with any of the new hardware. That's perfect. So last thing we got to do, I already went ahead and torqued these down. If you haven't yet, torque them down, 125 foot-pounds on each one. If you can't get any sort of good leverage on them, or if they keep spinning around, use an impact. I used my DeWalt impact, works great. And then I went back with a torque wrench, make sure that they're tightened down to 125 foot-pounds. So the next thing we want to do is put on the guard that goes here. That's this guy. It's got 2 holes for lag bolts, and then on this side it has a tab. Looks like that tab just goes in there, so you put it in at an angle, it goes right in, and it holds itself in place. And on this side we want to install the 2 lag bolts. I'm going to try to get those lag bolts in from the inside out so that I have easy access to the nuts. Let's see if that works. Okay, we've got that on. I had to put the lag bolts in from the outside in, no problem. There's not a ton of access under there to get to those nuts, if you can see there. So make sure you have a ratcheting end wrench. If you don't have any, go get some right now before you start there. So there's a few spots where you're really going to have tight access and you're going to need a wrench like this, but if you don't have a ratcheting one, it's going to make life pretty miserable. So go grab a set if you don't have one already. And the very last thing we've got to do, there was a bolt or a nut here, if you remember, that was holding this guy in place, this little guard, and we need to put a bolt and a nut back in there. I'm not sure if that bolt and nut helps to hold this piece in place or if it's just to hold the guard in place, but I'm going to go ahead and put a bolt and a nut right back in there. That way it's firmly in place and protected. I'm going to use some of the new hardware that came with the kit because there are some extra bolts and nuts. And that's the very last step. After that, we should be able to give this a test and see how it works out.